today with our good friend Tom Sands, who's what we consider one of the legends of drag racing in Arizona. Um, People earn to be legends are earned in different ways for what they've done or how they've raced or enabled people to race or their support of what we do. And Tom Sands has a great story. He was definitely part of the early days of the not right as Beeline started, but shortly after it started, and kind of cut his teeth in racing as a young man. He had a lot of responsibility before most people even understand what a car payment's all about or what life is about. We're excited, Tom. We're excited to have you here today to talk to us about your memories of racing in Arizona and the things that stuck out the most. You definitely had great experience at Beeline Dragway, and we're one of the key people to transition for us to get Firebird Raceway, International Raceway, now Wild Horse Pass opened. And so you got it. We'd like share some memories with us. I know that you weren't there the first day, but somebody took you. When was your first trip? Was Beeline the first drag strip you went to?
The first drag strip I went to, and as I recall, I was probably 14 years old, and we rode our bikes from Scottsdale out to Beeline across the Indian Reservation. And we got to the booth where you pay, and there was 2 or 3 buddies, and we didn't have enough money. So, we turned around and rode all the way back home, and that must have been 64, 65. And then the next time I went was, the lesson that I learned was that when you go to a drag race, bring money. So the next time I went was fall of '67. It was something like the Western Funny Car Nationals or something, and they had all the big names of the funny cars, the floppers, and were going to be there. And I think I drove out then with money, with a couple of buddies, and watching those funny cars and looking at the technology of the cars. I was always kind of mechanically inclined. Just was hooked at that race, and it started going pretty regularly. I don't know where I should go with this, but I was fortunate that I was able to purchase a car that I could race out there.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Where were you originally from? Were you
born in Phoenix. My parents
okay.
moved out here from Wisconsin in 1950, and I was born about 6 months later.
So you're Phoenician.
Phoenician,
Where did you go to high school?
Coronado High School, where a bunch of people that I ended up hiring.
You were all Dons.
We were Coronado Dons,
I
yes,
remember that,
out of Coronado High School. And over the years, I had gone to Manzanita several times with neighbors that were sprint car fans. And I remember falling asleep as, I don't know, I must have been 8 years old or something, but laying down because the races would run late, fall asleep at the track. My father was a pretty good mechanic, and he got invited to be on a pit crew for a hydroplane out at Lake Pleasant. Now this was, I don't know when it was, 1960 sometime, and he took me out there with him, and I was just the sound of those motors going across that lake and working on them, and it was just a lot of fun. So I always liked motorsports.
Yeah, as a young man, your motorsports, I would imagine because of what you went on in your career, you're probably a pretty good student, and also I know that, one of the things that I share with you almost all the way, you were an Eagle Scout.
I was an Eagle Boy Scout, yes.
And I have a lot of respect for that because I got just almost there,
yeah.
Then the cars bit me and I kind of lost track, but I think that's very interesting that your passion, is going to tell a story here of how you see things and you follow through and you make things happen. And I think we're going to talk about here is the, you're out there, also you're starting to be a spectator at Beeline Dragway. How did you get a job there?
Well, I had some good friends from Coronado High School that raced drag bikes out there. And I think there was two brothers, Gordon and Jim Henderson, and then my buddy Travis Toomey, and his buddy, and to be soon my buddy, Norris Bruce, who was a heck of a drag race, drag bike racer. And so so I hung around with those guys and helped them work on their bikes and would go out to the tracks with them. And then one night we were out there and somebody came down from the tower. I think there was a race director, Dave Lindsay, came down and said, "Doggone it, the ladies up in the tower cannot see the numbers on those drag bikes. We don't know we can't read their dial-ins. We need to have somebody that has that information on a piece of paper come up to the tower, tell us what bike that is, what the number is, what the ET or what the dial-in is." And so then they went to Norris with that, and Norris turned to me and said, "Tom, you want to do that?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So I gathered up all the information, and I'd go up there every round. I'd be up there helping the ladies and the race director and the announcer, who is this guy and so forth, what kind of bike was it. And I think I even did a little bit of announcing pretty early when the drag bikes were racing, because the announcer gave me the microphone.
You didn't know what to talk about. You did.
Yeah, I did. I knew the guys and the bikes and so forth. So when I would be up there, I like to think of myself as a somewhat quick learner most of the time. And so I'd watch how the clocks were, and I was enthralled by the way the clocks work, and the guy running the handicapper and the announcer and the whole mechanics plus the view up there. And like Steve said, it's air conditioned up there. I picked it up pretty quick. And then so that went on for several months, and then the race director at the time, Dave Lindsay, had some sort of a big disagreement with the promoter, Rick Lynch. And he threw up his hands and he walked off the job in the middle of the race, and he took his sister and his brother. His brother was a staging steward down at the head of the staging lanes, and his sister, as I recall, was on the clocks. And so they just walked off thinking that would be the end of the race. And Rick Lynch turned to me and said, "Tom, do you think you could finish this race for us?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I can." I mean, we were halfway through it, so we finished up the race and went okay. Then after that race, when it was over, when everybody was paid and we were closing down the track, Rick came to me and said, "Tom, would you like to be the race director?" And I think I was 21, 22 years old at that point. And I said, sure. And I was thinking to myself, if I screw things up, he'll let me go and I'll find something else.
No harm, no foul.
Right, yeah. So that's how it started.
That's unexpected consequences in a good way. You became the race director. Did you know what was involved behind the scenes before you said yes, or was it did you kind of learn on the fly? Because certainly you had to have some planning and organizational
Mm-hmm.
skills to sure you're race director. You're part of making sure you had a crew there, mm-hmm. and the crew that worked well and was copacetic with each other. And then you got to talk to angry racers from time to time. Mm-hmm. Were you aware of all that was involved, or how did you develop that skill? Because you can watch a lot until you actually do the job.
Right.
Oh, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. I was a pretty good observer when I would go out there, and then after I became a race director, I would go down and I would hang out in tech with Don Gainey and Bob DeYoung, and I'd watch what they did and saw how they interacted with people, and I kind of got to know how that worked. And I go down to the starting line and talk to those guys, or watch from above and see what was going on down there and what they did, and how racers would come up to them and they would resolve issues and go back and the race continued. So I think it was a combination. I kind of knew what was going on. One of the things that I wasn't aware of was the technicalities of the starting line system and the electronics off the track. But I had to learn that because we would go out there and rats or squirrels or something had eaten through the wires from time to time, going down a quarter mile. Everything was all copper wire going the quarter mile to all the clocks and the winter picker and so forth. So I had to learn all of that, which was interesting. And you can set up that stuff. I would take it home and set it up in my garage or my dad's garage, and had the Christmas tree, the clocks, and you could see how everything worked. And you just use long extension cords when you actually go out to the racetrack. So that was something that I had to learn. And that resulted in me going out on kind of a side story. Was I learned pretty quick that the night before the race, if it was a Saturday night race, I would go out there Friday night after it cooled off at 7, 8 o'clock at night, turn the lights on at the track, go out there, set up the clocks, turn everything on, and go down to the end of the track with my voltmeter and read all the volts all the voltages at all the locations, all of the photo cells, to make sure we had 12 volts down there at all locations. And if we didn't, I didn't go home until we had 12 volts at all the locations, so that I knew I'd come out the next day about noon or 2 o'clock. But you don't want to come out there and have the track not working electronically. Everybody's upset at you then. Everybody.
What was the timing system then? Do you remember? Was it a Klondike?
It was Klondike. It was an early version of Klondike. It was amazing. It was all relays at the back of the Christmas tree. Very little, no digital. It was all just relays, 12-volt relays, and lots of wire, lots of 12-volt wire going down to everywhere.
I can remember, a short stint where I had worked there. I got to meet, was it Art Hayward or? He was
yeah,
he
right.
was a Klondike guy, and I remember him being out there because it was an NHRA race, and wanting everything, make sure everything worked, and seemed to, everything seemed to go off. Well, did you ever have one of those nights when the clock's bitching and you just couldn't get a hold on them, or it sounds to me like you're pretty prepared that was a minimal.
I don't remember the night, but it happened once. And I think Mr. Lynch came up and had a little talk with me about, what the heck's going on and how this happened. And I explained, it's the wiring. But I think after that, I learned pretty quick to go out there the night before.
Okay.
And the first time when I would get out there on a Saturday for a race, the first place I went, turned everything on, down to the top end with my voltmeter, making sure those photo cells were ready to go.
I don't, for all the times they're out there, I don't really remember any issues. People always complain that they were wrong, or I went through first, or of course racers never make a mistake at times, but it was really hard to blame them on the clocks.
Yeah, I don't know if I should tell the story or not, but I will, because it's been 50 years. But
statute of limitations are over.
Yeah, right. So we were out there one night, and talk about electronic failures. We had one, but it was the final right before the final funny car final. They would typically bring out 8 funny cars. They'd do 3 rounds. And so I think all the races were done, but we had a funny car final, and the clocks quit for whatever reason. It did not work. We weren't getting data from the top end. Well, we needed to run the funny car race so the guys could go home, and the crowd was waiting to see the final. So we said, well, we're going to do it. let's just roll with it. And so I had my buddy who worked up there, Pat Hale, said, Pat, go down to the finish line, and we had this device called the winner picker, and basically the volts would come in, and then 110 volts would come out to either that light or that light at the finish line. I said, Pat, go down there and unplug the winner picker, and when they cross the finish line, you pick the winner and plug it in. And so that's what he did, and we were. And so
the winner really won.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Pat was there watching it, and he knew who was in what lane. And then up in the tower, we just made up a time for both cars, and everybody was happy and applauded, and they went home and came out to the next race.
Always leave them smiling, right?
Always leave them smiling. The show must go on.
I think I remember hearing a story of that over the years. That was ingenious. What they didn't know didn't hurt them, and the track was still safe and all that.
Right.
You definitely were involved with a lot of. Rick Lynch was a promoter. Charlie was as well, but they were in such different ways. I think Rick was more of a P.T. Barnum. This give him a good show, and he would have different celebrities and different types of events. I remember. Seeing the ramps out there, and I think Jim McCormick hit the ramp one night with his drag car, and the things, the consequences you didn't expect. But overall, most of those events were really entertaining. What's the thing What do you remember? Give me an event that still sticks to mind in your mind that is like, wow, did that really happen tonight? And we pulled it off, or
Well, we had a few of those, but the Evel Knievel night that Don and Steve talked about, that night was pretty interesting, and it started a few days beforehand when Evel Knievel came out to the track, and Rick Lynch said, "Tom, you need to come out there because with Evel Knievel, we're going to go through this program. What we're going to do, he wants to see where the ramps are going to go and so forth, and we're going to talk about this." So I was out there with him. It was Evel Knievel, his setup guy, and Rick and myself, and up in the tower. And Evel Knievel kind of hobbled up there, and he had this cane that he had, but had a little silver top on it that would unscrew. It was about as big as a tennis ball, and it would unscrew. And we're out there talking about what's going to happen, and he would unscrew the top of that thing, and it was full of aspirin. And he would take 2 or 3, pop them in his mouth like M&Ms, chew them up, swallow them, and put the cap back on, and we'd continue talking. 20, 30 minutes later, open it up again, 2 or 3 more aspirin. So it started with that story prior to it, and we had it pretty well planned out. And it's like we talked about where we're going to put the ramps, and they wanted to put them on the side of the track. And I said, well, I don't know. We got cars going down the track, but there is a risk. But Rick said, yeah, let's go ahead and put them on the side of the track so we can just use forklifts or people, or I forget how they moved them back onto the track, but it was some way. So I was a little nervous about that, and sure enough, it was still daylight, but Jim McCormick had I believe a Camaro, orange Camaro, ran down there, lost control, ran off and ran into the ramps, and I could see boards splittering, and my stomach just turned over. I thought, holy cow, now what are we going to do? We got a big crowd coming, and cars backing out to the Beeline highway, and so Evel's guy went down and looked at the thing, and first we had to get Jim's car out of there. He looked at the ramps, and he said, if I have a couple boards, I can take care of it. So he took care of it while we were still racing, and we were able to move the ramps on, and it worked out fine. He did his jump, and thank goodness he made his jump. I was nervous about that too. That you never know with Evel,
right?
If he was going to make it or not.
Well, and pretty much, do you think the crowd? Most of the time, the crowd isn't like wanting to see something bad, but the crowd was kind of there in case something did happen. I think that was more of a excitement for him.
Yeah, it was the excitement and the achievement.
Right.
Assuming that he did make it, but we were all hoping that it was safe. So that worked out well. I remember the Gary Wells incident, and I know the other guys have talked about how Evel was pretty upset about that, but I didn't see that. He was upset down at the ground with Rick and whoever was down on the ground, probably the staging stewards and the starters and stuff.
So what had happened is he was out there, and Gary and his brother came on the track and rode up by him when he was doing when he was pre-jump, or.
Well, yeah, my recollection was that he would do some wheelies before he made his jump, just to kind of go up and down, and he was practicing stuff, and he was he was a showman. Evel was an extreme showman, and he would do wheelies, and then like the guy said, out of the top end someplace, here comes 2 dirt bikers, and what are they doing? And then so they're I think a short distance behind Evel, and they're doing wheelies too. And when he saw that, he was really upset.
And in reality, for the crowd, probably thought
it's part of the show. Yeah, exactly. So it turned out okay. And then they disappeared, and I didn't know who they were, but obviously their name came out later.
And then in subsequent years, Gary was a show. He did some shows there as well.
We had him out there at least twice. Yeah.
Yep. You had celebrities there in what was the Billy Beer night? Oh,
Billy Carter. Yeah, Billy Carter. That was an interesting night. Rick was a big fan of something exciting at every race, have something different. So he somehow got a hold of Billy Carter's agent and hired Billy to come out, and he brought a bunch of Billy Beer, or had it shipped out, And Rick had trophies made out of the empty beer cans for that night, and those were pretty cool. And then there's probably a few of those still around someplace. I'd like to see one, but that's probably a collector's item.
So for the people that aren't really aware, there are some people going to watch this video, and then who's Billy? Billy Carter was Jimmy Carter's brother, the president of the United States brother. So I imagine with that, there were some secret agent people or Secret Service people or something. There's no security back then for him at all.
No, he had one other person.
Okay.
And that person, I'm not sure where he was. He might have been a security person. Maybe he was at the bottom of the stairs, seeing who was coming up the stairs or whatever. But I remember we were in the control room, and Billy was in the room next to us, all by himself, just sitting there. I mean, he was a pretty basic guy. I mean, his brother Jimmy Carter was the president, but Billy he liked his beer, and he was a kind of a good old boy down south, and that's what his notoriety was in the press. And I'm not really sure people would come out to see him, but Rick wanted him there, so he was there. I almost felt kind of sorry for him, just sitting by himself next door, and he handed out some trophies after the race, but that was about it.
But at the time, that was really kind of the big story. The president's crazy brother, kind of like I think Clinton had a brother who was that way, and I'm sure there are other presidents that have done the same thing. But that this Rick Lynch is as interesting as he is. That's the kind of stuff he pulled off.
Right. Yep.
Your brother Tom.
John.
You're Tom. Yeah, we'll get you guys. You're both good looking. Okay, get you confused. How did John came along, and you had to be proud of what he started doing, because he certainly has gone on and done a great in motorsports, had a great success. Yeah. When did he start working with you?
Well, he was let's see. So I was 22 when I was race director, and watching what went on. I'd go down to the time card booth and see what was going on down there and how was things going, and learn that deal. And then one night, and then I also put together the crews every night for every race. And I'd start like a week beforehand calling all of the crew people, hey, are you available? And you've got your key people that you got to have there. Mm-hmm. And then so one night we had a shortage of time card booth hander-outers, I'll call them. We had people in the time card booth writing the cards down, and you give them to somebody, and they would see, okay, here comes car 701, and they go through their list. Okay, here's your time card. Off they go. So my brother is 10 years younger than I am, so he would have been 12 years old. And he was coming out to the races with me when I'd come out there to work. He wanted to come too. I said, come on, you can hang out and whatever. And so when we needed a time card booth worker, I put him to work out there, and he did a great job. And so I think it was the next race or so, I put him on the payroll. It paid what, $2 an hour or whatever it paid, but that was a part-time job for him. And then he progressed, and he would be key. I don't know what all jobs he worked. I think he worked tech for a while under Don Gainey's tutelage. I don't remember him down in the starting line at all, but tech, time card, coming up in the tower. Maybe he ran the clocks a little bit. But then at some point, when so I started working there as race director in '72, and I got a job at Salt River Project in '74, and I started tapering down. And I would work the big events every month, but other people would work the events like the Wednesday night drags, even the Saturday night or the Friday night, whatever, midnight drags and so forth. So my brother found his way into helping with that, which these others were helping out with that as well. But I didn't have any interest in going out there for those smaller events.
The transition, he was, I know he eventually took care of the secondary events and stuff, and I'm sure that you're really proud of what he's gone on and has accomplished in his life. The Beeline Dragway closes down. Of course, towards the end, we were kind of tumultuous with the relationship. We had a lot of great ASU football players out there doing different jobs, whether they actually worked well or not out there. They were there. It was a job.
They worked well.
Yeah. I do remember, being, around some of those guys. I also remember the division in town of Frank Cush and Kevin Rutledge, I believe, and kind of spilled over to the drag strip as far as people wondering what's going on, because Rick was a big ASU supporter, big football fan. That kind of that was kind of towards the end there. That was but the football players themselves were kind of celebrities there. The local people who were drag racers were also a lot of were football fans. They got to see their favorite football player there as well. I thought that was pretty interesting. Rick started getting sick and the track closed down. Unfortunately, Rick passed away from cancer, and that's unfortunate. But left us a lot of great memories of Rick Lynch Promotions, and going down to the photo. What was the photo?
Super Snap.
Super Snap. His little his business on Camelback Road, and quite the guy. So when were you first aware that there was going to be a Firebird? How did?
I think the word got around, the rumors and such, and then I think I drove. I still only live about 5 miles away from it, and so I drive down there, and yeah, sure enough, look, they're doing some construction out here, and I thought that's going to be great. That's going to be good to have drag racing back, and then kind of forgot about it, or would go out there occasionally and look at it, and then I
used to be able to stop on Maricopa Road. You could see look down where they're grading and paving they're getting ready for the drag strip. Yeah.
Right. And then out of the clear blue, I got a call from Bernie Partridge with the NHRA. And when Beeline converted to the NHRA, Bernie was our divisional director. And so he was out there, and he was a great help in converting. I mean, meeting with Don Gainey and others about how the NHRA does things and answering questions on the rules. And he really was a good supporter. And so he was up in the tower a lot and saw how we ran everything. So I got a call from Bernie Partridge, and he said, Tom, they're opening a new drag strip out here. Charlie Allen's deal from Orange County had closed down, I believe, at that time. And I said, yeah, I've heard about it. And he said, Charlie's expecting 600 to 800 cars out there the first night. A lot of California cars are coming over. And we're expecting a lot of cars, and Charlie wants to bring over his crew from Orange County to run the race. But he said, I told Charlie, I said, the Beeline crew, if they're still around, I watched them run several races, and it was first class. I mean, they ran a good race, they had good people, and you might want to consider some of them. And well, Charlie didn't know any of us. So Bernie said, would you be willing to put together a crew and help that race? And he says, I'm only talking the first race, because after that, maybe there's going to be fewer cars and whatever. And I said, I was thinking to myself, I gotta see if I got a crew, because if we don't have a crew, I don't want to be out there, because that's just going to be a mess.
Especially guys that you know and trust.
Well, then that's a whole other issue. Yeah, that's one of the valuable lessons that I learned out there as a young man, 22, 25 years old, is that hire good people and then stand back and let them do their job. And if there's an issue that comes up, give them the benefit of the doubt until you hear both sides of the story, and then deal with it. So
great leadership. Hire good people and get the hell out of their way.
Right, and you have to have that at a drag strip. I mean, things happen on the starting line. Decisions have to be made immediately down there, and you want good people. You have to have good people that'll make the right decision. Good people in tech. I mean, because if things don't go well, guess where they end up? They come up to the tower and they're upset, about so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that and made this decision, and then they're very upset. And I never got pushed or shoved, but it came close. It came close a few times. There were some pretty upset people.
Well, you absolutely did the right thing with that first night at Firebird was like off the hook. I mean, there were cars everywhere, and this was jam-packed track back before everybody had super haulers and super trailers, and it was still crowded. There were people everywhere, and there weren't 18-wheelers, and there weren't sportsmen didn't have toter homes and stacker trailers. They were just, most people told out with a pickup truck and a flatbed trailer, and they were everywhere. Pretty much that night went off, other than the one thing I've learned about drag racing: you can't compress time. You only put so many cars down the track if everything goes well in any given time. And the race went on until early morning. I think I gave up around 4 in the morning and went home. but it was a magical night, and I think you should be congratulated. Your team should be congratulated. You brought drag racing to the next level in Arizona. Definitely, Beeline was a great track, and when Beeline opened, it was in itself a super track. But there better showcases came along, and Firebird brought a lot of notoriety and a lot of attention to Arizona, and it was very important that first night went off well. How long did you work? I know you went to work for Salt River Project.
Mm-hmm.
You worked, was it hydrology, or what was your?
I worked in the water engineering department as a civil engineer.
Okay. That was probably pretty interesting, but a full-time job.
Yeah.
How long did you continue? You worked that first race. You brought a great crew out there. How long were you involved with the track after that?
Well, I kind of wrestled with it because I saw how supportive Charlie was, and plus he paid well,
that's novel.
And we didn't have a lot of the Beeline issues with the promoter and so forth. It was just a very well-run business. But I was busy with work and had other interests, and so I told Charlie that I would work out there until we could train up people to take over, and so I could just kind of bow out. And I think I worked there probably another 3 or 4 months, maybe probably by summertime. No, I remember it was warm, so I must have worked into the summer, maybe June, July. And they'd been phasing out and closing, transferring more responsibility. And I remember Don Gainey was between Don and Joe. I was training those two guys so that I could bow out. And when they got to the point where they were comfortable, that was great.
In my opinion, those two guys are just perfect people. Joe could be kind of the tough, gruff guy, but he really was compassionate to people. And I think he took a lot of things on the sleeve when it didn't go right. I mean, he didn't. I don't think he wasn't the person who would lash out at other people. He would say, "Let's make this right. Then we'll talk about it later."
Well, yeah. What I found out over the years and working with Joe is that he would solve more problems at in the staging area than I ever solved up on the tower. Mm-hmm. So, and he was down in the heat and action and the noise and so he was awesome. And when he would make a decision and throw somebody out or whatever the situation was, they'd come up to the tower sometimes, and I'd talk to Joe, talk to this guy. I think every single time Joe was correct, and I'd back him up.
He was still was quite a guy, and definitely if we had him here today, we'd be interviewing him because he's definitely another legend. You transitioned away from that. You work full time, but you also have another passion. Several passions. You like outdoors. You were like another good friend of ours, Jim McDade, mm-hmm. who chose to stay active in a adult leadership role in Boy Scouts. Mm-hmm. Did a lot of great things for people. What was your drive, to still do the Boy Scout thing? I mean, we need great men to be leaders, and that was, you've definitely fulfilled that role. What was your most satisfying part of that role?
Well, I guess I got involved with the Boy Scouts when I had my first son, Preston, and he was born in 1977. So at 11 years old for a scout, that'd be about 1988, right? So in 1988, I got back involved in Boy Scouting again, and I felt I owed him something because I learned so much as being a scout about responsibility, and some of the success at Beeline, maybe a lot of success at Beeline, came because I had worked at summer camp and had been a senior patrol leader of our troop, of our Boy Scout troop when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. Earned my Eagle Award. So I got involved with Scouts, and then a few years later I had another son. Well, let me back up. So with my oldest son Preston, I encouraged him, and he loves the outdoors, and he became an Eagle Scout. And then I had 2 more sons, and both of them became Eagle Scouts. Just encouraged them, and I knew what a great program it was, and they've all done well. I'm glad to say they all have jobs and they all have homes, so that has worked out well. And then, like you say, I'm still involved with Scouts. I'm involved in 2 Boy Scout troops. One is the same one that my youngest son was in. 12 years later, I'm still on their committee. And another Boy Scout troop, my Kiwanis Club sponsors a Boy Scout troop, and I've been their liaison representative for more than 25 years.
That's fantastic.
Helping them solve problems, teach the boys, let them earn responsibilities, encourage them. And you're right, and it's so rewarding. Every once in a while, you meet a young man, you get to interact with a young man on a board of review or with a merit badge or something, and those kids, that kid just gets it. He just gets it, and it makes you feel really good about the future of this country. That you think, well, this kid could be a congressman or a senator, maybe even president. So really sharp people really get it.
One of the things I fondly remember about scouting was a single parent home. My mom did, was great. Couldn't be here without her. But I got to do things that I wouldn't have been exposed to if it wasn't for the leadership of the adults, the men volunteering. Saw a lot of great things. I also remember my second camp out. We had a national fire at Canyon Lake and had to put a mini forest fire out one time. But so I got my firefighter merit badge that day. But it was scouting. I can never thank it enough for the things it taught me, and I appreciate your efforts because it's important to a lot of people. There's a lot of young men that wouldn't have the exposure and the experience of the outdoors or leadership or responsibility if it wasn't for people like you. And I think that's part of the legend in you that I truly appreciate. You've done a lot of great things. You're certainly active still. In doing things. I follow you on Facebook. I see you. I get to be up. You have a place in Prescott. I get to be up there 3 or 4 days a week now. I enjoy the weather. A little cooler than here, but you certainly have had a great life. And if when the time comes and we're all standing around with our red Solo cups, and we say, Tom was a good guy, what would you like us to remember you as?
As a race director, that I was fair. I mean, I went overboard to be fair, and I think that's why I lasted so long out there. Is you had to be fair. You had to think in advance where there's going to be problems and take care of them before they became a problem. You can't just assume that somebody else is going to take care of it. I took responsibility. I delegated well, maybe hired good people, delegated well, and maybe had some luck.
Certainly, luck's a part of everything, but I think that you were well prepared and you're the right person for the tasks that been laid in front of you in your whole life. And I certainly appreciate you being here today. I appreciate your friendship. Tom, it's pretty awesome for me to tell you, but you are an Arizona drag racing legend, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Chris.
Okay, have a good day.